Henry Ford created the car that put the world on wheels and was hailed as an American hero. But was he? Find out next in the No Zone. This program is made possible in part by a grant from the George D. Smith Fund.
Do you recognize this car? You may not, but it's probably the most famous automobile in history. Now, why is this car so famous? Well, it's not the first workable automobile ever built. That was done 100 years ago by a German inventor. His name was Carl Benz. He started a little company that you may have heard of. We know it today as Mercedes-Benz. This isn't the first American car either. And even though it's a Ford, it's not the first Ford. Ford Motors have been making cars for 5 years when this one came along. This car is the Model T. And it's famous, my gosh, not for its legroom, that's for sure. It's famous because it was an instant success. This car in 1926 cost $380, and more than 15 million of them were sold between 1908 and 1927. This is the car that put the horse and buggy out of business, and in the process, changed the world. November 1936, the Detroit Coliseum. 9,000 Ford dealers had come to see the new V8 unveiled.
Ford has scored again. Let's see that car.
Years earlier, when automobiles first came out, they were considered a luxury for only the very rich. But one man made cars so economical that most working Americans could afford them. That man was Henry Ford, and it was his vision that put the world on wheels. From rags to riches, Henry Ford's life seemed to symbolize the American dream. Always mindful of his days of rural poverty, Ford had a film made about his early years. Henry Ford was born in 1863, 30 years before the first automobile appeared in the United States. He was brought up on a Michigan farm his father was struggling to clear, and his early life was an endless round of farm drudgery. His only formal education was through 5th grade at the local one-room schoolhouse. Henry hated farm work, but he loved tinkering with mechanical things. As a teenager, he became fascinated with steam engines. In a small notebook, he jotted down his own design for a model steam engine and for a water wheel that was built under his supervision by boyhood friends. Henry Ford realized early that one machine could do the work of many men. By 1885, when Ford was 22, America was greeting the industrial age. Cities were being linked by railroads. Farmers were moving into the cities, and urban populations were growing fast, bolstered by a steady stream of European immigrants. They found jobs in newly created industries, huge factories like the Westinghouse Works. This is the earliest film record of mass production, a relatively new concept in manufacturing. These workers did not need special skills. Their function was simply to put identical parts together. Mass production made inexpensive goods available to the swelling urban populations. This world would soon be Henry Ford's world. In 1891, Ford married a farm girl named Clara Bryant. They moved to Detroit, and 2 years later, their only child, Edsel, was born. It was an important year, 1893, the year the Duryea brothers ran the first gasoline car in the United States. At 28, Ford started working as a machinist at the Edison Company. He gained a reputation for being able to fix things, and he would stay in the shop long after hours tinkering and doing his own experiments. In 1895, he built a single-cylinder engine that could power a light bulb. The next year, he and a friend handcrafted one of the country's first cars. It was built around a bicycle frame and ran up to 20 miles an hour. Although Ford's horseless carriage went relatively unnoticed, the automobile did not. Between the years 1896 and 1908, more than 300 car companies were formed. Most of them folded within a year or so. Powered by gas, steam, or electricity, most of the cars were big, impractical, and very expensive. It was during this time that Henry Ford had a revolutionary idea to make a small, reliable car that everyone could afford. But first, he had to make a name for himself in the automotive world, and he did it in a very dramatic way. In 1901, car racing was a thrilling and dangerous new sport. Cleveland car maker Alexander Winton held the speed record, an amazing 38 miles per hour. Henry Ford decided to challenge Winton in a race. They were neck and neck until Winton's car broke down and Ford coasted on to victory. Ford gained fame not only as a racer, but also as a builder of reliable cars. He was now able to find financial backers to form his own automobile company. In 1903, the Ford Motor Company was opened for business. In its first year, Ford Motors sold 700 cars. The next year, 7,000. To meet the rising demand for cars, Ford built the largest factory in the world at Highland Park in Detroit. Ford dealerships were set up around the country, and models ranged from cheap to flashy. Ford wanted to make the lightweight Model N. The company directors saw more profit in the expensive touring car. But Henry Ford wasn't just after profits. He believed the world could be made better by the automobile. His vision gave birth to the Model T. The people's car, he called it. A car that would bring families together.
Johnny O'Connor owned an automobile. He took his sweetheart for a ride last Sunday. He was dressed up in his best Sunday clothes. She nestled close to his side. Things went just dandy till they got
This
down
is an
the
early
road.
advertising film for the Model T. The car does everything, goes everywhere, even up hills.
Everything needed repair. So he got out and got under, got out and got under.
In 1908, Model Ts cost $825. 8 years later, they were down to $360. At that price, almost every working man could buy one.
Johnny, one day, your little sweetheart don't appreciate you. I have a daughter who is hungry for love. She likes to ride by the way.